Welcome back to Marvelous Videos. I'm Rylan, and today we will be exploring the Underworld franchise. The Underworld horror series discloses the eternal conflict between the vampires and the Lycans, a human form of werewolves. The first movie was released in 2003 and introduced the audience to the dark underworld of the vampires and werewolves, with endless gunfights and bloodshed, which continues for the rest of the series. The scattered timeline spans over centuries, intrigues the viewers, and demands extreme attentiveness to understand the movies. Each new sequel of the series reveals some past secret, of which the present plot is based. The Underworld Rise of the Likens was released in 2009. It was a prequel of the entire series, and depicts the entire vampires and the Lycans war. Kate Beckinsale is seen as Selene, the death dealer of the vampires, who has the leading role and becomes increasingly popular among the audience with each release of the sequels. Len Wiseman was one of the writers of all of the movies except Underworld Blood Wars, which was released in 2017, while he also directed the first two movies, Underworld in 2003 and Underworld Evolution, which was released in 2006. Though the series invited negative comments from the critics, it amassed a large fan following and crossed $539 million in box office against a total combined budget of $207 million. So join us as we dive deeper into this otherworldly franchise of Underworld. Before we go into today's analysis, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small step for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thanks. Now, on with the video. Underworld, the first movie, released in 2003. The movie commenced on a rainy night when two vampires, known as death dealers, are seen monitoring a pair of Likens on the street below.
Lucian, the most feared and ruthless leader ever to rule the Lycan clan.
The death dealers, Selene and Rigel, are experts in tracking and assassinating the immortal ancient species of Likens. Selene, among them, is further interested in slaughtering the Likens, as she considered them responsible for destroying her family in her childhood. The Likens realized that they were being targeted and retaliated by firing machine guns. During the chaos of the shooting, Selene realizes that the tracked Lycans were in fact following a human, Michael Corvin, which was quite unusual. Selene fought back, forcing the Lycans to retreat, and Selene followed them and found their lair, where she heard strange howling. She reported to the Vampire Coven's mansion, and reported everything, but the Vampire Regent Craven did not pay her any attention. Selene secretly continued her investigation about the Lycans, and the reason they were following a human. Meanwhile, in the underground lair of the Lycans, a scientist, Singe, was busy experimenting with the kidnapped descendants of the Corvinus family to find a pure source of powerful Corvinus blood. While investigating, Selene broke into Michael's apartment, and suddenly the Lycans start to attack them, and their leader, Lucian, bit Michael on the shoulder. They escape the attack with each other's help and return to the vampire mansion, where Craven's angry words made Selene suspect whether Lucian was truly dead 6 centuries ago. A servant named Erica discovers the Lycan's bite on Michael's shoulder and throws him out of the mansion. Selene continues her investigation and, in the library, finds an ancient book where she learns that the powerful Lucian was still alive. Subsequently, she awakens the powerful vampire elder Victor, thinking that he would help her.
Please forgive me, but I desperately need your guidance.
But Victor is outraged at being awakened ahead of his scheduled time, and the vampire elder Amelia orders Selene to be locked away.
Time. One awake, two asleep. That's the way of it. It is Marcus's turn to...
But Erica releases Selene, hoping that she would leave the coven and stop being her competitor for Craven's love. Selene fled to meet Michael, but a shootout distracted her, and the Lycans ended up kidnapping Michael. Subsequently, Selene kidnaps the Lycan scientist, Singe, and takes him back to the Coven, where he admits to Victor that he had been experimenting with the bloodlines to create a powerful hybrid. In the meantime, a surprise attack by the Likens murders Amelia and the other vampire council, all of which was set up by Craven. Infuriated, Victor kills Singe, instructed Selene to kill Michael to be forgiven for her past mistake of awakening him, and sets out to seek retribution from Craven. Meanwhile, Michael, who was captivated in the Lycans' lair, learns that Victor had killed Lucian's vampire bride Sonia to prevent intermixing of the two ancient bloodlines, leading to war between the vampires and the Lycans. The vampires attack the Lycans' lair. But Craven fled from Victor, only after shooting Lucian with a silver nitrate bullet, which was invented by the vampires, especially for the Lycans. Selene, though she had not entered with the vampires, left the group to find Michael. The jealous Craven shoots Michael as well, and Lucian, before death, requested Selene to bite Michael, so that his blood would have both vampire and Lycan strains. Craven informed Selene that Victor had killed her family, and not the Lycans, and he was responsible for killing his daughter Sonia, which had triggered the perpetual war between the two ancient clans. Victor attacks Michael, but he successfully mutates into a Lycan vampire hybrid, and while Victor was strangling him, Selene kills Victor by slicing his head with her sword. Selene and Michael leave the lair together to escape the attacks of the remaining vampires. Back in the vampire's mansion, blood from Singe's dead body seeps through the floor and reaches into a tomb of the slumbering vampire elder, Marcus Corvinus, who awakened with black eyes, indicating that the two bloodlines had mingled to transform Marcus into a robust hybrid. The movie didn't quite generate a positive response from critics, but generated the complex vampire werewolf mythology that was highly appreciated by the general public. The story and special effects won high appraisal as well. Scott Speedman's career accelerated with his role as Michael Corvin, for which he won a Saturn Award. Underworld Evolution. This movie is set in the year 1202 AD, when an army under the leadership of the three vampire elders, Victor, Amelia, and Marcus Corvinus, arrive at the devastated village, where the werewolves have attacked, erupting a terrible bloody war between them. During the tumult, Victor and Amelia captured William, Marcus's twin brother, and the first potent werewolf. Victor commanded that William be imprisoned far away from Marcus, in a secret location never to be found. The story then continues from the prequel, where Selene took hybrid Michael to a safe place, hoping to return to the vampire mansion to kill Craven and avenge the death of the vampire elder Amelia. Meanwhile, Marcus, who had already transformed into a hybrid, destroys everything to avenge Victor and try to attack Selene and Michael. When Marcus confronts Selene, she admits to her role in Victor's murder.
Selene.
Victor deserved his fate, and Craven was no better.
And Marcus agrees to her actions, though he believed that Selene was shielding some fact and winds up attacking her. Michael saves Selene and prevents Marcus from getting a hold of Lucian's pendant, which was in their possession. Michael and Selene escape and take shelter in an abandoned warehouse, while Marcus took refuge in a stable to recover. In the meantime, an elder leader, Lorenz Macaro, was seen sending a team of cleaners to investigate the battle between the vampires and the Lycans within the Lycan lair. Cleaners were a secret society of men whose function was to stop any conflict between the immortal races and to conceal any proof of their existence from humanity. Macaro finds the pendant just below the ribs of Victor's dead body, which is identical to Sonia's pendant, which Michael and Selene have possessed. Eventually, Michael and Selene decide to unveil the truth behind the pendant and track down Andreas Tanis, who was a vampire historian exiled by Selene.
Andreas Tanis. He was the official historian of the Covens.
On compelling, Tanis told them that Marcus, and not Victor, was the first vampire, though Victor, till date, had maintained the impression that he was the eldest vampire. Marcus and William were the twin sons of Alexander Corvinus. William was bitten by a wolf and mutated into a werewolf, and Marcus was bitten by a bat, therefore becoming the foremost vampire. William and the werewolves were highly destructive, and they did not possess the power of taking human form as required. To control the ruination of William and the werewolves, Marcus approaches the old warlord Victor to track and capture William in return for being converted to an immortal vampire. Marcus only wanted to capture William and tame him, but Victor betrayed him and locked William away, thus assuming the most powerful vampire role as both Marcus and William were in hibernation. He did not slaughter the brothers as he was afraid that their death would lead to the extinction of all vampires and Lycans. Tanis also disclosed that Selene's father was the architect of the prison where William was being kept, and Sonia's pendant was the key to the prison. Eventually, Victor had killed Selene's family, as they knew Victor's secrets, and converted Selene into a vampire. Tanis then mentions Lorenz Macaro, as he would help Selene to stop Marcus. After they left, Marcus arrived there, and bit Tanis, to gain his memory and therefore killing him. Selene and Michael approach Lorenz in his hideout ship, the Sancta Helena, but Selene realizes that he was none other than Alexander Corvinus, the father of Marcus and William, and the oldest immortal.
By any name, I am still your forefather.
Alexander confesses that he and his team of cleaners were responsible for eliminating any traces of vampire-Lycan conflict from mankind, but he refused to kill Marcus as he was his son.
You are asking me to help you kill my son?
Suddenly, Marcus attacks the ship, slaughtering Michael and wounding Selene. He then drinks her blood to obtain the location of William's prison and wounds Alexander. He procured the pendant, which was the key to the prison, and declared his intention to become a god and rule the hybrids. With Alexander's guidance, Selene drank his blood to become powerful enough to stop both Marcus and William. Selene and the remaining cleaners were ensued in a terrible battle with Marcus, William, and their army. Selene was about to lose when suddenly Michael, whose dead body was in a body bag, regenerates. Being a powerful hybrid, he kills William, while Selene was able to kill Marcus. Selene's eyes turn from blue to white, and then back to blue again, confirming her transformation that Alexander wanted, but she was able to withstand sunlight. The movie concludes with Selene expressing her fear that the dark days were ahead, but the light had brought new hope in her. Like its prequel, this movie was not received well by the critics, but the audience enjoyed the movie so much that it became a modern blockbuster. Hundreds of fans waited patiently for hours to catch a glimpse of Kate Beckinsale and the other movie stars in the preview. The movie was released on January 20th, 2006, and by March, it had already grossed $111.3 million worldwide, as well as a $62.3 million in the United States alone.
We can be slaves, or we can be Lycans!
Underworld Rise of the Likens. Underworld Rise of the Likens, though the third movie of the series, chronologically was the first movie, revealing the facts that led to the Vampire-Lycan War. The film's timeline started in 1402, when a werewolf mother was captured by vampire elder Victor and gave birth to a human baby. The baby, named Lucian, was the first Lycan responsible for the immortal clan of werewolves, who were able to take human form. With Lucian, Victor visualized a clan of werewolf slaves who would protect the vampires in the daylight. Lucian grew old and became a blacksmith in the vampire coven. Eventually, Victor's daughter Sonia and Lucian started to develop a liking for each other. Once, Sonia, who was patrolling outside the walls of the Corvinus castle, was attacked by the werewolves, but Lucian quickly arrives there and saved her by killing the werewolves. Victor notices that Lucian's liking for his daughter and humiliated him about his low position in the coven. Late at night, Sonia and Lucian met secretly to discuss their future. When Lucian disclosed the key that he had made, which would open the collar that enslaved him and the other Lycans. He requests Sonya to escape with him, but Sonya warns him about being hunted down by the death dealers and asked him not to use the key. Neither of them are aware that another vampire was observing them and knew all about their secrets.
Careful, blacksmith, lest your eyes betray your secret.
The human population outside the castle was protected from the wrath of the werewolves by Victor against attacks. Once, such a human family of nobles visited the castle to pay the tithe when Sonya decided to protect them from the werewolves, despite the severe warning from her father and Lucian. After Sonya left, Lucian became aware of the werewolves in the woods, where Sonya had gone. He stole a horse and sword from a death dealer and hurried to save Sonya. A fierce battle soon erupted in the woods between the werewolves and Lucian, along with some vampires. They were almost captured by the wolves when Lucian decided to transform into a Lycan to save themselves. The werewolves retreated following his howl, but he was shot by the death dealers. Back in the castle, Victor whipped Lucian 50 times to punish him for opening his collar and locked him away for the rest of his life. Inside the prison, Lucian met another slave who was also quite powerful and learned that his name was Reyes. When Sonya came to meet him, Lucian told him that vampire Andreas Tanis was aware of their relationship, and she was ready to let them meet in private, in exchange for a seat in the council. Sonya informed Lucian that Victor would execute him the next day, and that he should run away from the castle at sunrise, while she would meet him after just 3 days. Meanwhile, Victor started the process of converting the humans to Likens, and began enslaving them. When they were sent back to their cells, Reyes tried to convince them to revolt against Victor. Tanis provided Lucian with the key to the prison, and the next morning, Lucian escaped from the jail, while freeing the other Likens as well. Lucian and a few other Likens reached the woods safely, and decided to free the remaining Likens from the castle, with the help of the wild werewolves. Soon, he became worried about Sonya not arriving on time, and Sonya's friend informed him that she had been imprisoned by Victor. Lucian arrives at the castle to rescue Sonya, but they were confronted by Victor and the death dealers. Sonya requested her father let them go, as she was carrying Lucian's child.
Call up your men, for the sake of your grandchild.
But this infuriated Victor immensely, and he put Sonya and Lucian both in prison. Sonya was also sentenced to death by the council, and was burned alive by the sunlight. At night, when Victor painfully retrieved Sonya's pendant, an enraged Lucian transformed into a Lycan, snatched the locket from Victor, and tried to escape, only to get impaled by arrows. He summoned the wild werewolves and then freed the Lycans, who attacked and captured Coven following a terrible battle. Victor and some of the vampires tried to escape from the prisons, but Lucian followed them, piercing the sword through Victor's mouth and head, while his body splashed into the water. As Lucian declared victory, Tanis led Victor's living body into a hibernation chamber in a ship, while the vampires and werewolves were still engaging in their fighting. The movie ends with the opening scene of the first Underworld movie, where Craven told Selene that Victor, and not Likens, had slaughtered her family, while she was kept alive, as she reminded Victor of his daughter Sonya. Selene did not believe it, and calls it lies. Underworld, The Rise of Lycans, received a higher positive response from critics, more so than its prequels, and no wonder, on its opening weekend, the film became #1 at the box office. Apart from Kate Beckinsale, Bill Nighy, as Victor, was praiseworthy as well. The film answers all the questions arising from the first 2 movies, about the eternal conflict between the vampires and the Lycans. Underworld Awakening. The events of Underworld Awakening occur 6 months after the second film, Underworld Evolution, where human beings become aware of the existence of vampires and Lycans, and they start their mass extermination, during which vampire Selene was captured. She was held in cryogenic suspension, which was a chamber in the headquarters of medical corporation Antigen, where subjects are preserved for study and experimenting. Antigen supposedly was involved in inventing an antidote to the virus that created vampires and Lycans. After 12 years, Selene managed to escape from Antigen and started having visions, which led her to meet a fellow vampire, David. The visions also led her to a young girl named Eve, who was later discovered to be Michael and Selene's daughter.
What's your name? Subject to...
David took them to the Coven, but they were not welcomed by David's father, Thomas, who held Selene responsible for the destruction of the vampire clan. Dr. Jacob Lane, the director of Antigen, and his son, Quint, were actually Lycans, and the experimental antidote was to enhance the immunity of Lycans against the deadly effect of silver. Eve's hybrid genetic code was required for a successful experiment, and thus Lane sent Quint and other Lycans to abduct Eve. Many vampires were killed in the process, and Quint got transformed into a gigantic super Lycan, using Eve's blood. After defeating Selene, severely wounding David, and capturing Eve, Selene saved David by using her immortal blood, which she had received from Alexander Corvinus in Underworld Evolution. Selene approached Detective Sebastian, who was trying to investigate the occurrences of Antigen. She implored to use him to help her save Eve, and he concurred to do so. Selene demolishes a part of Antigen's headquarters with explosives. This forces Dr. Lane to remove Eve from the building for conducting an operation on her to prepare an antidote. Meanwhile, Selene found Michael, frozen in one of the cryogenetic chambers, and helped him to escape. Dr. Lane, escaping in a van with Eve, was stopped by Detective Sebastian and Selene. But Quint arrives at the spot in his super Lycan form and encounters Selene. Eve somehow managed to unbind herself from the van and joined the fight. She took upon Dr. Lane, who tried to transform himself to the super Lycan form with the same injection used on Quint. Sebastian and David joined Eve to confront Dr. Lane, when finally, Eve killed Dr. Lane by ripping out his throat. Selene intelligently hid in a small chamber, compelling Quint to revert back to his human form, when Selene forced an activated silver-based grenade on Quint, making him explode. Eventually, Selene and the others desperately look for Michael, but there is no trace of him. Selene promises to find Michael and take back the world from humans and Lycans to reclaim the vampire empire. Underworld Awakening is all about the action fan club, as it hardly offers any storytelling, making it rather inconsequential in the other Underworld films, especially after its prequel, which had a powerful storyline. This film was one of the first films shot exclusively in Red Epic 3D digital cameras for the impact of the highly successful combat scenes, turning it into the highest grossing movie of the series. Underworld Blood Wars. The plot reveals that Selene has been targeted by both vampires and Lycans. The Likens, under the leadership of the powerful Marius, needed her to locate her daughter, whose blood could transform Lycans into vigorous hybrids, while the vampires wanted to avenge the deaths of their former leaders, Victor and Marcus Corvinus. Selene had only David and his father Thomas as her trustworthy allies. Thomas approaches the Eastern Coven of the Vampires with a proposal of amnesty, where the leader, Samira, agreed to shelter them if Selene decided to train their young and inexperienced death dealers with her combat skills. The council members granted the proposal, and Selene arrived at the Eastern Coven, along with David, where they were honored with a grand reception. And Selene started training the death dealers when vampire Varga, who was Samira's lover, poisoned Selene and killed the trainees, framing her for the slaughter. Samira, who pretended the clemency, in reality wanted to avenge Victor's death and started draining Selene's blood, intending to drink it, and thereby gain Selena's power. In an attempt to rescue Selene, Thomas and David confronted Samira and Varga, where Thomas was killed, while David and Selene managed to escape. Selene and David took shelter at the Nordic Coven, ruled by the vampire elder Vidar, who discloses the fact that David was the son of Thomas and deceased vampire elder Amelia, making him the legitimate heir to the Eastern Coven. Selene and David were pursued by Alexia from the Eastern Coven, as instructed by Samira. But she was also the secret lover of Marius, hence revealing to him the location of Selene in the Nordic Coven. Marius and his Lycans attacked the Nordic Coven, confronting Selene, David, and the Nordic vampires, led by Vidar's daughter, Lena. Marius in werewolf form was too powerful for Selene, and further, she was stabbed by Alexia. Marius demanded Eve's location, but Selene replied that she had no clue where Eve was. When Alexia tasted her blood to retrieve the blood memory, she ascertained that Selene was telling the truth.
She's telling the truth.
Infuriated, Marius shot Selene as she slid underneath the ice. Back in the Eastern Coven, Samira drank Selene's blood after purifying it from the poison and began to transform. Alexia returned to the Coven and narrated the occurrences in Nordic Coven, but she was killed by Samira for her treachery against the vampire clan. Meanwhile, David returned to the Eastern Coven, demanding his rightful inheritance, which was supported by the Coven as well as Varga, while Samira was imprisoned. Eventually, Marius and his clan attacked the Eastern Coven, and David, while fighting, faced the powerful Marius, when Selene suddenly appeared and engaged herself in the fierce battle. Later, it was revealed that she had been resurrected by the Nordic Coven after some rituals, thus receiving new powers and increased speed.
Impossible.
She continued slaying the Lycans, allied by the Nordic vampires, led by Lena, while making her way through the castle. While Samira escaped and confronted David, Selene and Marius continued their combat, when a drop of Marius's blood fell on Selene's mouth. Instantly, she recalled the blood memory, revealing that Marius captured Michael Corvinus and slit his throat to consume his blood. To enhance her fury, Selene bit into her own wrist to recall the pleasant moments that she had with Michael, Eve, and David. And, with a fist of fury, she ripped out the spine of Marius. David also managed to kill Samira, and when he displayed the severed head of Marius, the Likens retreated, thus ending the fierce, bloody war. In the aftermath, Selene, David, and Lena were chosen as the new vampire elders. Selene, after her resurrection at the Nordic Coven, was reunited with her daughter, Eve, who had used a telepathic link to stay connected, and in the end, was seen approaching her mother, Selene. The film, directed by Anna Forrester, was released on November 24th, 2016, in countries around the world, and January 6th, 2017, in the United States, and was the least grossing film of the franchise. It is quite surprising that Kate Beckinsale actually turned down the role of Selene at first, but on repeated request, she considered and eventually became the major attraction of the series with a huge fan club. The film received a mixed response from the critics, while grabbing a B+ grade on the audience poll. Apart from Kate, Theo James as David and Lara Pulver as Samira were highly praised for their performances.
Once, not in 14 centuries, not since we elders first began.
Future of the franchise. Len Wiseman, the leading name behind the Underworld series, in a 2014 interview, disclosed that apart from Underworld Blood Wars, a sixth film was under current development, but its production was only to be considered on the box office success of Blood Wars. Unfortunately, because Blood War fetched the least in the box office when compared to the prequels, it did not evoke as much enthusiasm as the other movies of the series. Moreover, Kate Beckinsale, the leading protagonist of the series, expressed her serious concerns about the future of the sixth sequel, while she herself is uncertain about coming back to the series. Now that there is a gap of 5 years and the rumors of Underworld 2 are still dormant, Underworld fans are truly eager for some concrete announcements which are yet to be made. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to send a like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. For Marvelous Videos, I'm Rylan. Have a good one, and be safe.